I was also a business angel. So I set up with other women, the women also as a practitioner, and I hope you will enjoy it. So thank you all of those who joined us to attempt this Arqus debate. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you more about Arqus. So the Arqus European University Alliance brings together the universities of Bergen, Granada, Graz, Leipzig, Lyon, Padoue, and Vilnius, 7 long-standing, prestigious universities who share the conviction that European cooperation is essential to the global future of their institutions. Arqus, being a people-centered alliance, aims to promote a multilingual, international, entrepreneurial, and innovative approach in the provisions of education, research, and innovation. So now we're going to start an Arqus debate. So the Arqus Academic Debates is a format that was first introduced last summer to show the scientific expertise that the 7 Arqus universities jointly offer. The format is planned to happen every 6 to 8 weeks, and its topics always revolve around issues of high importance across Europe, but also across the world. The panel consists of renowned researchers of the Arqus universities coming together in an online debate that is meant to address the broad public and answer their questions. So the topic of today's is women entrepreneur barriers and driver when developing their entrepreneurial projects. This debate focusing on the current situation and perspective on women entrepreneurship, and more particularly the question of financing their entrepreneurial project. The contribution of women entrepreneurship to the economic and social development of society is no longer in doubt. Many political figures have talked about how women are the most underutilized economic asset in the global economy, but also that the economic benefits of women's inclusions are higher than previously thought. However, also the number of women entrepreneurs is increasing, barriers still persist, and seems to make it difficult for women entrepreneurs to develop their project. According to several reports from the European Union, when they create and manage a business, they are facing more difficulties, especially to access financing compared with men. This is even becoming one of the main factors of failures in women business creation. So the last women entrepreneurship report from the Global Entrepreneurship Monitors notes that the average for women's intentions to start a business within the next 3 years is 17.6%, only about 4 points less than for men. So things are better, but not enough. So to discuss this topic with us, we received today 3 women. Some of them are researchers, others are practitioners. They come from Austria, Norway, and Spain. All of them are very involved in women entrepreneurships and will bring us their experience and visions. So I will ask them to introduce themselves in alphabetical order, one by one. So Anna, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and why this topic is so important for you?
Thank you, Marie-Christine. I would like to start by saying many thanks to all the organizers for having me. It is a great pleasure to share this conversation with all of you. I am Professor of Business Administration at the University of Granada, and women's entrepreneurship constitutes one of the main research topics on which I have been working during the last 15 years. My work spans different contexts in which women are developing their entrepreneurial activity, such as the small business context, the knowledge transfer they develop through the creation of academic spin-offs in the context of universities, poor neighborhoods in Latin America, or groups at risk of social exclusion in European countries. My interest in this topic comes from my broader interest in entrepreneurship and inequality. Gender inequality is actually the form of inequality that has been most studied in the field of entrepreneurship. However, many studies in the mainstream entrepreneurship research have portrayed women as the underdog, involuntarily reproducing broader gender stereotypes. My view is that research has to be a tool for positive social transformation. And from this perspective, I will challenge some of the assumptions and the findings of previous research that I'm going to present during the debate, and adhere to more recent critical stances that researchers have adopted. I think that would be all about me for now. I'm looking forward to sharing our views and experiences during the debate.
Thank you. So I think now Lisa Marie.
Nice. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on this lovely evening. I would have loved to meet you all in person, but hopefully at one point we can do that in one of our lovely cities. So a bit about myself. I am the CEO and co-founder of Female Founders, which was started in 2016. And by now, thanks to Corona, I have to say to some extent, we have become the biggest and fastest growing community for female entrepreneurship in Europe, meaning that we're reaching more than 25,000 women every week with the things that we're doing. The focus of our work is basically solving two of the biggest pain points in the European tech and innovation ecosystem. One is, from our perspective, as was already mentioned, this topic of access to funding for female adventurers, because what we see in Europe is that more than 90% of venture money is going to all male teams. And this is just a huge funding gap. The second pain point that we're addressing is this overall topic of female talent in the tech and innovation industry. Because no matter if we look at startups, when we look at scale-ups, or also established organizations in the field of technology, it's mostly men making the decisions and creating technology. And we truly believe that when we talk about innovation, technology, we talk about the future. And I think our common goal as a society and as economy should be to actually create a future that is a better one for all of us. And if this is our goal, we have to include as many people as possible in the discussions. And we believe that when it comes to gender, this is one of the biggest inequalities that we are facing, because last time we checked, women make up more than 50% of the world's population. So they should definitely have a seat at the table and be part of the forefront of creating technology and innovation and the future for all of us. Female Founders itself, we're based in Vienna, have grown to a team of 12 people. So we've tripled in size in the past 12 months, which is pretty exciting. So we're also going through this startup growth pains, so to say. We have ambassadors across Europe, and our approach on doing things is really a European one, because we believe that there's nothing like borders when it comes to creating technology and innovation, especially in our more and more digitalized world. Other than that, I'm also quite active when it comes to changing the political situation in Austria for startups. And I'm super happy to announce that today the Austrian government has decided that female entrepreneurship is one of the core topics that they will be focusing on in their strategy for startups, which is pretty exciting. And I really hope that we can have some impact on Europe in general. Thanks for having me. Super excited for this conversation that we're going to have.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
This was a very encouraging message, Lisa. Very, very happy to hear that. A bit myself as well. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Healthy Eats. We work towards making healthy and sustainable living easier for all and cut emissions within the food industry. My background is from a master's economics, but to be honest, most of the inspiration I got from starting my own company was actually working in a tech startup in Silicon Valley and traveled to about over 100 countries worldwide, where I learned a lot about culture, foods, and people. But the reason why I'm so interested in this topic is because coming from a country like Norway, we're on the world rank of the most gender equality countries in the world. But still, we have certain industries where there's still a huge gap. as an entrepreneurship, tech-oriented, growth-oriented fields. So I want to contribute to close that gap, and I hope we can address that today, how we can work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you three today with us. So we will address this topic in three parts. First part, what barriers are slow down women entrepreneurship? And second part, on the contrary, what are the drivers that can stimulate it? And finally, we will focus on women and the financing of their entrepreneurial project. So also, I want to let you know that if you want to put your question or your comments on the chat, don't hesitate, and we will try to answer it at the end, probably. So the first part of our debate will be dedicated to the barrier to female entrepreneurship. And my first question to open this debate will be about all these barriers that could slow down the entrepreneurship, sorry. And Anna, we prepare this debate and we discuss about culture and mindset. And I think is there any research about that on your research? Or?
Yes, well, research has reported several barriers to women's entrepreneurship. And among these barriers, they have talked about difficult access to finance, smaller and more personal versus professional networks, which would potentially limit the access to resources, a lower presence of women in sectors with high potential for high growth entrepreneurship, as the technological one, a higher risk aversion, or more. Here I start with the factors related to women entrepreneurs themselves as individuals, how they operate. Research has also documented that they have different standards of success, and also present lower growth aspiration in comparison to men. My view is that several of these factors can be traced back to the social dominance of specific profile of entrepreneur as the norm for what is good entrepreneurship, which is technology-based, growth-oriented, that takes high risks, high stakes also, and is an aggressive competitor. When comparing women with this profile, in most cases, women appear as less entrepreneurial because the characteristics they exhibit do not match this profile. Ironically, the profile of entrepreneur is not even representative for the larger population of male entrepreneurs. Research has documented that plenty of small businesses in general, and those led by men, do not want to grow because they do not want to lose control, or because the business is a lifestyle option for the entrepreneur and he wants to keep it small and more easily manageable. So this stereotype about the entrepreneurs, I think that imposes important barriers in terms of access to resources and support, actually for all those who do not conform to the standard norm. And it presents it kind of distorts entrepreneurial imagery towards a small and maybe not representative sector of what the whole population of entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you. I think that Lisa Marie, you have also some elements to complete these aspects.
Definitely. So I would very much agree with the things that Anna Maria just said. So it's a lot about how we perceive risk, because when we look at how women and young girls especially are being socialized, it's really about being nice and being kind and being tidy and blah, 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 all these things. Whereas boys are being socialized as, taking risk and being proactive and getting stuff done and getting dirty, etc. And I think this is something that really has a huge impact on how people develop and how they perceive different things. Because when you get told, like, for the most important years in your life, like when you're a kid and when you're growing up and when you're becoming an adult, that you should not take risk and that you should make sure to not speak up and just be nice and quiet, that just has an impact on you, right? And that is specifically, as Anna Maria said, not exactly what entrepreneurship is about, because when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's about making decisions which is automatically connected to risk. Because as an entrepreneur, you just don't know what's right and what's wrong. You just decide, or you have to make a decision, because not making a decision is the worst thing that you can actually do. So just to add up on this, and I think especially this funding part is something that is pretty critical and pretty essential. So as mentioned in my introduction, so giving access to funding is something that needs to be a big game changer in the European ecosystem, not only in Europe, but generally on this planet, I guess. Because even when we not talk about these high growth, super scale up companies, it just makes sense to get money because you need money at one point, especially when you grow the company, if you want to become successful, etc. But when we look at the funding side, it's mostly, and sorry for talking stereotypes here, but it's mostly old white guys writing the checks, right? And when those people are writing the checks, they tend to give it to someone who they trust. And I think it's very natural that we trust people who are similar to ourselves, meaning that old white men are very likely to give the money to young white men. So we have a huge problem there, because these are the people who are having the money. Because when we look at the investment landscape and the investment behavior of women, we see that not that many women are actually investing, not only talking about startups and angel investing specifically, but also about venture capital and generally investing, let's say cryptocurrencies or whatever. So women are very hesitant to actually do this. And I think as long as this side is not changing, we won't see a boom of female entrepreneurship, because the money needs to come from somewhere. And we need to have more women start investing in young women and also trust them. Because I think that a lot of female entrepreneurs and a lot of the discussion that we're having about supporting entrepreneurship and women, also in leadership position, it's about mentoring and giving them someone as partner on the side that they can talk to, etc. And that's nice. And I think mentoring is very important, and it also helped me a lot in my career. But honestly, that's not enough. It's really about promoting and sponsoring people and giving them the abilities, which is in a financial and capitalistic system, money. And I think this is something that we should need to focus on as an ecosystem and as everyone who is being involved.
Yes, we really agree about that. And if you want to go deeper about family, for example, my mother and my grandmother were entrepreneurs, and for me, entrepreneurship is natural, but it's not always the case. And Anna told us about stereotypes. And is the family important? Regine, you want to complete also what we said already?
Definitely. You were fortunate, though, Marie-Christine, to be growing up with both a mother and you said also a grandmother, it being that kind of a role. But then again, that's not for everyone. And what is interesting is that if you grow up with more, for instance, women that are in such roles or in technical roles, you are more likely to become either an entrepreneur or go into technical fields. And if there are male roles in your lives that does the same thing, it won't affect you as a female. So that's really interesting to see. And that also shows the importance with these role models, both in society, but also in our lives. But think about the family situation. There we need to look more deep into. A few years back here in Norway, one of our big female leaders here, she was attacked by the media for being a bad mother because she was setting everything into business. And even her daughter wrote a reply to the papers saying, "Thank you, mother, for making me independent in an early age." These newsletters, you would never write that about a male. So already here, we have certain stereotypes and expectations in society that we need to be changing. And so here we have a certain issue that we need to be addressed. And also nowadays, when almost all of us are taking either bachelor's degree or master's degree, we finish our degrees maybe in our mid-20s. And that's maybe when we are in a situation thinking about establishing families and so forth, and maybe are more risk averse to seek also financial stability and so forth. So it's something to look into, definitely.
Okay. Yes, and I used to be a mentor for women entrepreneur, and there is a big difference between the students entrepreneur and women entrepreneurs that are about 30 years old with children, and it's not the same thing, really. So Is there any other barriers that we maybe forgot at this stage, or do you have something to... No, it's okay? No? Okay. So now we are coming to the second part. It's what kind of drivers do we have to stimulate women for entrepreneurship? And is the education important? Regine, I think you have an experience for us.
Definitely. Today, female tend to choose less growth-oriented fields instead, because nowadays the most growth-oriented fields are such as technology, entrepreneurship, mathematics, and so forth. And it's only just men that are choosing those fields, or at least the majority. And I mean, if you look at startup today, the tech startup, that is expertise they're having from before. So if you don't have those education, you're less likely to also start a company later on. And that also is a huge difference. But now again, how many engineering studies do you see a lot of females? Less likely, not many, right? So it seems like women attract women and men attract men. So we need to make it more attractive for us women to choose either technical fields, engineering, more entrepreneurial fields, and make it more common. Because education also sets our environment, who we are exposed to, and also how we're going to shape the community as a whole going forward, right?
Yeah. And yes, Anna, I give you the floor.
Yes, definitely the field of education is of utmost importance, but the level of education, it is not. And actually, there are no significant differences between the level of education of men and women entrepreneurs. And in this sense, I wanted to share with you the results of a study that we developed here. The study was about women's participation in academic spin-off creation. These are businesses that are created as a form of transferring knowledge that was developed through research in the context of the university, and is transferred to society to the creation of a business. Our findings showed that even we talk about highly educated individuals, I mean, all of them had PhDs in an environment that a priori is not the most adverse to gender inequality. We found that the parental roles and the social identities academic men and women had were very gendered. And for example, most of the women founders of spin-offs either had no children, either had their children grown up at the moment when they decided to become entrepreneurs. And that was a stark difference with men. So I would add here that it is not a matter of the level of education, it is a matter of more structural barriers that restrain women participation in specific sectors and activities. And this is related to what we have been talking about, the stereotypes, the role models, and the lower traditional presence of women in fields that are more likely to generate high growth startups.
Can I add some points to this education part? Because I got a couple of them, to be honest, and I agree with everything that was already said. But to follow up with especially this university education part, and I have a bit of background in this topic of spin-outs, etc. And what I feel is that when we look at universities, we have specialized universities in specific topics and fields, and there are coming experts in these fields. But what we see is that, for example, when we take universities focused on economics and business, we have founding teams just coming out of the students groups and founding companies, where every investor will be like, yeah, okay, that's nice if we have 4 people with business administration background starting a tech company, but who is actually the tech person in this company? So I think something that we should foster, and that should be even more fostered at universities, is really to have an exchange between the different fields to make sure that people meet each other, build a network coming from different disciplines, getting connected and building super nice companies. Because I think this time during university is such an important one in everyone's life. So for people who are or have the ability to attend university and have the background to do so, I think that's actually this time in your life where sort of your personality is being shaped and built, and where you actually build the network for your future career. So I think this is why it's especially important that people get connected from different fields. So I think that's the one thing. The other thing, when you talk about education, starting probably at an earlier ages, that I also agree with Anna that it's definitely not about the hard skills that women are missing, because I think they're very well educated. They have massive experience in the things that they're doing. They have great degrees. So for some fields of study, we see even more women graduating university than in others. But I think there's a big lack of soft skills. So it's really about confidence at the end of the day, and having the confidence to say, yes, I'm a woman, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I'm going to build a tech company or whatever type of company, or just be a leader and really see this vision and have the courage to actually communicate what they want. And I think this is again very much related to, on the one hand side, education, because I think every discussion that we're having about entrepreneurship will end up talking about education at some point, but it's also again about socialization and how women are being brought up. And I think that's just a bit annoying that this is obviously still a discussion in the 21st century. And maybe because I always feel that this discussion for some people might feel like, okay, this is so abstract and this is not concerning me because I'm not particularly active in that field, and female entrepreneurship is a problem that should be solved by someone else, and especially this point of socialization. But I think change can really happen with super small steps and can be fostered by everyone. So if there's one thing that I could really encourage everyone who is listening or watching today to do, is really be aware of your personal biases, because I think that everyone has biases, and especially when it comes to diversity, no matter if it's gender diversity or other aspects of diversity, I think they're really, really deep in us, and I think we need to be aware of them and see how we, for example, treat kids. Like boys and girls, do we treat them differently? Do we, for example, find it weird when we dress girls in colors that are considered male, like blue, or when they play with, I don't know, certain types of things that are usually considered toys for boys, etc. Because I think that there are a lot of these small biases, and they have such a big influence on the lives of these young kids. And I think we can definitely have a change here and just encourage people to be aware of the other biases and step up and encourage women and young girls to be present and believe in themselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In France, we have in Lyon, we have an incubator with 50% of women and 50% of male. It's not, it's like that. And it's really a good thing. And it's a woman team that win the last awards. So
really?
it was really good. But we have a lot of things to promote entrepreneurship in our university and in France. And it's better and better each year. So we talk also about networks, because we also said that men have a lot of networks, and to be an entrepreneur, you need networks. So what do you think about that? Maybe Lisa Marie, of course, with your female founders, you have to let us know some things about that.
Yeah, so thanks for bringing up the networking part. I think networking is essential, as you mentioned. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, or generally when it comes to having a nice career, I think it's pretty essential. And I have the impression that a lot of women feel uncomfortable when it comes to networking, because they might feel that this is such a transactional thing. So I talk to someone because I want something from this person, then this person wants something from me. And I really get the impression also with the people that we work with, or the women that we work with, that they always feel bad about this. They feel bad about getting connected to someone and asking for something. But I think that's just the nature of business, right? And it's not about selling something that no one needs, but it's about solving problems and creating value for both sides. So I think that there is so many different aspects to networking, and it could be perceived so differently, because when it comes to networking, what is networking about? It's about establishing relationships, getting connected and being interested in other people, and not being in a sales conversation from minute zero. So I think this is sort of a narrative that we need to establish, especially when it comes to women, and also encourage them to actually network and find networks that they like, because I get it, some networking events just suck. So you go there, you're the only woman in the room, and you feel uncomfortable. And that's fine, because I think almost everyone would feel like this. But I think it's about creating spaces where networking comes more natural and where women feel comfortable. And also, and I think that's the second aspect when it comes to networking, I think a lot of women feel that networking is a waste of time because it's such a big commitment to go to mostly evening events, talk to other people, etc. And making time in your day is super tough, especially when you're a woman having a lot of duties on your table, because when you talk about care work, it's mostly women doing that thing. But it really pays off. But again, it's about efficiency and effectiveness at the same time, and not being everywhere, because no one likes being everywhere, I get that, but really finding the things that make sense and where you can meet the most interesting people. So we give our founders very clear ideas and structures on how to be effective when it comes to networking, which is preparation and finding the right events and researching the people in advance and making sure to not waste time if you already have your time limits.
I think, Regine, you have an example to say.
Yeah, myself, I'm in an incubator here in Norway. And I think out of the 20 companies in the incubator, I think we're 2 female founders. So here is still it's still a gap. But it's a great place to be a part of the incubator, because we get access to help with financing. Also, as you said, where to seek for public grants. Also go to the media to get also the marketing parts. It's a great asset, but I just wish it was more. We had more women, definitely, and more arenas where we could meet and foster and so forth. Because as you mentioned earlier, Lisa Marie, is that people tend to like people like themselves or people they would like to be. And then it's easier to identify with the same gender, right? And also talking to more common ground and so forth. So especially we have some place to go there.
Can I just add one thing? Because I think this similarity bias to some extent is something pretty interesting, because we get a lot of feedback. So why are you only offering this program to women? Isn't this discriminating against men? And of course, there's a point to this. And yes, to some extent, it might be discriminating. But the fact is, when you have a group of women, the dynamic is completely different. They open up, they speak up, and they especially share the things that they are not working well. And let's face it, when it comes to entrepreneurship, there will be a lot of shitty situations where you feel like, why am I doing this? Should I stop? And I think it's just so nice, especially when you're a solo entrepreneur, to have someone to talk to, get feedback, and realize it's not only me facing these difficult situations, it's happening to everyone. And you will get out of these shitty situations, and you will continue to thrive, and you will be successful at one point. Plus the second aspect, what we see in our cohort, in our accelerator program. So we're offering a 3-month accelerator program, fully digital, for female entrepreneurs from across Europe, is especially this accountability part. Because when you meet this group of women, in our case, every week, you automatically create this sense of accountability, because everyone is sharing how things are progressing very openly, very honestly. And you also feel the need to do something, because people are just pushing each other, and they become more and more successful at one point, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Actually, research confirms this, and there is an increasing support in the evidence for creating, for example, business angels networks only of women, because, for example, when women are part of a business network, but they are a minority, the homophilia that we've been talking about doesn't work, actually. And well, results are not quite concluding. There is contradictory evidence, but recent findings are supporting these only women networks as a way to facilitate access to resources.
Yes, and there is a link between if we have more women entrepreneurs, we will have more business angels, women business angels, because we need money to be a business angel.
Yep.
So we have a question before. It's Eunice. If you see the comments, she wants to share questions about cultural proximity and diversity. It could accelerate entrepreneurial venture, especially for women migrant entrepreneurs do you have any experience about that, or about migrants? And no?
You go first, Anna.
Anna, Lisa?
No, you go first, because the direct experience in this topic I do have not.
And
so I'm not sure if we have like super direct experience, because as mentioned, we're working with female entrepreneurs from across Europe, and I have to say that it never made any difference, no matter where these women were coming from, if they had like different background coming from any other part of the world and just moving to Europe and getting connected. So I think when it comes to our case, I don't think so. That this cultural proximity, I mean, it's still Europe, right? So maybe there is a cultural proximity within Europe, but I don't think that there is any sort of difficulty here. But what I truly believe, and that's actually a discussion that we were having with some political organizations, is that when it comes to migration and integrating people, entrepreneurship could actually be a very powerful tool. On the one hand side, because it obviously creates jobs, right? So it gives people the power to create their own jobs, make money, have a life that is economically independent, which is, from my perspective, extremely important for women. So another aspect that is extremely interesting when it comes to female entrepreneurship, so really being dependent when it comes to money from your partner. But I also think that it could be a great way to actually, give people meaning in life, because when it comes to entrepreneurship, what is entrepreneurship about? It's about doing something that you care about, that you love. It's about solving a problem and having something that you stand up for every day and that you're excited about, and it gets you going and going and going. And it also creates value for even more people. So I think this could be extremely powerful. Plus the sort of personality type of an entrepreneur, or the things that you need to bring to the table, is you need to stand up for yourself, get connected, speak up, make your way, etc. So I think this could also be aspects that would actually fit the profile of migrants very well, because they've already had a big journey behind them. So they've coming from different countries. They left their countries for a couple of reasons. So they've already done an incredible job in making this step and being brave and taking a risk. And then they're coming to countries, and Austria is probably also a good example, where we don't make it particularly easy to be integrated in society. So I think offering smart solutions here and smart programs could be a big, big game changer, and it could be beneficial not only for the people with migrant backgrounds, but also for society in general and for the economy, obviously.
Okay, thank you very much. And what is or can be the role of states in promoting the women entrepreneurship? And it's a question for all of you, because I want to know what's about Spain, what's about Austria, Norway. Mm-hmm. So, Anna, or
okay, I start. Well, gender inequality is a structural problem, and I think that public policy should include a cross-sectional gender dimension in all the domains, not only regarding entrepreneurial support. I think that in the last 15 years here in Spain, we have seen a lot of progress in closing the gender gap, but there is still so much work to be done. In the entrepreneurship domain, there are support programs at different levels of the administration, at national level, regional level, even local level. For example, at national level, there is a program that has been running for 15 years now. Is developed by Women Institute and the Chambers of Commerce. It is called the Program of Business Support for Women, and provides promotes women entrepreneurship, provides information, provides consultancy for business development, and promotes networking among women entrepreneurs. But this relates very well with what Lisa was commenting before. I think that like in many other countries, we need more financial support, and we specifically need more finer-tuned financial support programs for women that respond to all the diversity of women businesses. Research has shown in this sense that government policies and general support mechanisms for women aim to close the gender gap, but they do not actually address systemic gender bias in lending protocols or in investment criteria. They rather seek to address the so-called deficiencies in women's entrepreneurial capacity, and sometimes they treat women like something to be fixed, to be more like the male entrepreneur stereotype that we commented before. And I think that this is a problem because it ends up presenting women in like the underdog always, and forced to some extent to conform to a specific entrepreneurship model, and women many times do not identify with that, and this prevents access to finance actually, and to resources that are fundamental for growing their businesses.
Oh my gosh, I so much agree. Like seriously, I mean, what we're trying to do, or not what we're trying to do as female founders, but let's talk about governments and society, and especially the venture capital industry. They are trying to fix women so that they fit a system that is obviously broken and not working, instead of fixing the system. And I get it that fixing a system and changing it is something that takes time, money, resources, and that is complex. But I guess it's worth doing it, because otherwise nothing will ever change. And my very personal view, and that's like probably a very pragmatic one, and I'm gonna make it short, as opposed to the other comments I was making. I think the government or governments in general have one clear role. If markets are not working, they should jump in and try to do something to make markets work. And when we talk about female entrepreneurship, female leadership, and the representation of women in leadership positions in general, there is obviously something off, because there are hardly any women in all of these positions. When we look at politics, when we look at established organizations, when we look at non-governmental organizations, and when we look at startups and entrepreneurship. So obviously the government needs to do something. And yes, I'm a big fan of quotas, honestly speaking. And they should be brave enough to do that, because otherwise nothing will change. Because if you don't incentivize people to change something, or if you don't push them to change something, they won't do it, because that's our human nature, right? We're reluctant to change, and we see threats everywhere, and we don't like taking risks. So there should be, actually, there's a big opportunity for governments to do something about this, and they should, because that's their responsibility. And that's what I expect them to do as a citizen.
And what's about Norway? You're mute. Regine, you're muted.
Oh, yes.
So what you just touched on, Lisa Marie, that, okay, the government need to take some responsibility. They started to doing that in Norway. So for instance, when I search for public grants, if an application is equally good, the female entrepreneur would be prioritized. So this, we're moving in the right direction, which is really good. And we even have a female prime minister, which is very, very good and is a great role model. But it's still a big way to go. I think 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs in Norway are still males. But at least the increased awareness in that both policymakers are talking about it and trying to make arenas where people can get mentoring and facilitating how to access financing. They at least trying to close that knowledge gap and trying to eradicate. But yes, a way to go, but we're moving in the right direction here in Norway at least.
I would like to add something, if I can. Well, I would go a bit further and challenge the criteria that usually is used for funding businesses, which is mainly purely economic indicators, and obviates usually social outcomes of entrepreneurship that have been documented as priority in women businesses, such as contribution to community, focus on disadvantaged individuals, or offering good working conditions for employee or a satisfactory work environment. They support programs also ignore, and in general financing programs ignore, the personal benefits of business ownership, which might promote gender equality at societal level, such as economic self-sufficiency, financial efficacy, career satisfaction. this, together with this focus on specific industries where women have a lower presence, represent barriers for the development of women businesses. And it's not that it's upfront discrimination, but it's a discriminatory force for women entrepreneurs and for those entrepreneurs that adopt different business practices for managing their businesses and different values, more than just growing profits, such as it is the case, for example, of the businesses that are coming from the social economy sector. No? And then there is another thing, which is related to some evidence that several studies have given, that the terms of lending, for example, are less favorable for women compared to those granted to men. And again, here, the interpretation is like, oh, this is not upfront discrimination. This is because women negotiate less, okay? And this is something that is also told when we talk about differences in salaries between men and women working in companies, no? And they say, oh yes, but it's kind of women's fault because they don't negotiate enough their salaries, no? And it's like a sort of blaming women for structural injustices. And I think that the solution to this type of problem is structural. And if we really want to close the gap because we consider it unfair, we cannot leave it to the individual action. And as Lisa Marie said, we expect the state to take a prominent role in this.
I love it how emotional discussion is. I really like it because but it's just so obvious that there are some things that are not working, and it's cool to see that this is perceived by more and more people. And I very much agree to the points that you raised, Anna, definitely.
Thank you. And to conclude this part, not this debate, okay. So my colleague from Montreal in Canada made video with inspiring women to be because they are example for the next generation. So my question is, we need models, we need example. So do you have some inspiring women that you want to share with us?
Shall I start? Well,
let's go ahead.
Yep. Well, I have known many inspiring women over time. My election now is Sonia, is an entrepreneur from a poor neighborhood of Guayaquil in Ecuador, and my choice is definitely determined by an availability bias, because we have recently come to know her through a research project which focuses on resource mobilization in women businesses that operate in poverty contexts. And briefly, her story is that she became entrepreneur because she had to search for a mean of living for her and her children after her husband abandoned the home because she started attending school. By herself, she built a support network among women in the neighborhood, which includes a mutual support fund for financing their businesses. And currently, she is not a rich business owner. Her business is a survival business, but she's a community leader, and she continuously searches for new means of creating gender awareness among women in the community, empowering women, and bringing more resources into her community. So yes, that was very inspiring for me to know her story.
Thank you. Regine, do you have an example too?
Yes, I just want to add something first quickly. I did a little test among 10 of my friends and asked them, what are one of the most inspiring female entrepreneurs you can think of? And I think 9 out of 10 of them just became silent and couldn't name a single one. So just there, we see that we have a huge way to go. But I think one of the women and entrepreneurs I want to shine light on for myself is a woman that has encouraged a lot of Norwegians. Her name is Anita Krohn Traaseth, and she is the former CEO of Innovation Norway. And now she's in the EU Innovation Council. And she has shown a lot of Norwegians that it's possible to be both a great business leader and also have a family on the side, even writing books all at the same time. And what she does, she shows everyone her insight or her valuable lessons and giving tips and encourage people to do the same thing, which I really admire. And I would love to have more power women like her to look up to. And even in society and in my private daily life, I think it's super important.
Yeah, I very agree. I have to say that I really admire and have the deepest respect for every woman who is stepping up and who is a role model and who is in public. Like seriously. And I faced this today because there was a picture of myself, getting a document from our minister. And what women, interestingly, and also some men were discussing was my outfit, because I was wearing pants and a blazer. And the women were discussing, is this something that women should wear? And I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, seriously, no one's caring about the content. No one's caring about the things that I said. People are discussing the color and the look of what I'm wearing. And I thought, okay, and this is just a very small example of what's happening to women, because obviously I'm not that famous as other women are, but that's just, that's what's going on, and that's what people are discussing. And this is why I have deepest respect, because when you read those comments, you really start to doubt if what you're doing actually makes sense. And they therefore have to really deepest respect and gratitude for women who do this and who are these role models and who sacrifice so much for changing something and for making this world a better place for all of us, and who are changing the situation for women. Because I know that it's not easy, it's super tough, and there's just a lot of critique coming in, and you really need to be a very resilient person to get through all of this. So deepest respect. And generally, I mean, there are a lot of people who inspire me sort of every day, and I would call them friends or mentors probably. So these are no names that you would probably know, but I really feel that these people are sometimes even more important because they keep you going and they support you when it's tough. And I really think that you're sort of the kind of average of your five closest people. And I think I have some pretty cool people around me, luckily. So I'd say it's definitely them. And when it comes to public figures or public entrepreneurs, so it's definitely the Bumble founder, Whitney Wolf. I think she's very impressive. I mean, she's basically disrupted an industry that is really interesting, really important, because dating is a topic that, yes, everyone is caring about, let's face it. Also, Sarah Blakely, the Spanx founder, also really impressive. And I also have to admit, I like, for example, Bobbi Brown, because I think I'm using her products. And I love it when women also create products for women, because I feel that when it comes to female entrepreneurship, everyone is telling you, yeah, you're creating a product for women. Yeah, right, because obviously women should create products for women. Men shouldn't do this because they just don't know the target audience. And therefore I would also like to add Delia Fischer, who is the founder of West Wing. And I don't know how familiar you are with this company. It's a German-based company. They are an e-commerce platform for interior design stuff. And what happened to her, and I think it's really a very classic story of female entrepreneurship. So she was pitching this, and it's about interior design and the nice things in life and good-looking products. She was pitching this in front of VCs, all male VCs, and they were like, no one needs this. Who cares about interior design? And then those guys went home and told their partners, their female partners, and they were amazed. And I think this is such a nice story of why it's important that there are women on the other side of the table, because they understand this target group. So I would name those ones, I guess. And there would be a couple of more, but happy to share a list at one point.
So to complete your example, I think I'm gonna give an example to an old example to have a complete scope. Maybe it's Coco Chanel, okay? Because she came from a really poor part of the France where I come from too. And she succeeded in a period where it was so difficult to succeed when you were a woman, and she had no husband, no father, she was no parents, she was just alone, and she made a great success by herself. she had no fear and she succeeds. So it's also a great example, I think. So now we're gonna be focused on finance, and I find some figure, and it's less than half of women's business closure reasons are directly attributed to financial reasons, 45%, including 99% reporting closure due to a lack of profit and 16 citing lack of financing. So concerning financing, we have different dimensions. And for example, when I was business angels, we saw just a young woman and they didn't ask enough. And we have to tell them that they need to ask more money to be sustainable. And in another way, I have a funny example, but I think, Regine, you have another one. It's that we had the case of a team of women entrepreneurs that had invented a male partner to raise more funds. And it works. So,
yeah.
So what do you think? Regine, you have an example too.
Yes, I do. It was this recent study where they had two groups which were presented ideas, one with a female voice and the other one with a male voice. So the male voice got 70% more funding with exactly the same ideas. So this shows that we have a big way to go still.
Okay. And Anna or Lisa?
Sorry, Anna, do you want to go first now?
No, you go first.
Okay, thanks. So the next time, and this is happening so frequently, a VC fund manager, investment manager tells me that there is no bias when it comes to VCs and female entrepreneurship, I think I'm just going to start screaming, because there's obviously a bias. And I think, Regine, this was the best example, because that's exactly what's happening. When a woman is talking about the big vision and what she wants to achieve, male VCs would be like, are you serious that you can achieve this? Isn't this bit of a big vision? When a guy would pitch the same vision, it would be like, this person is so visionary. That's insane. Such a cool person. He knows where to go. He's so determined, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to asking for money, exactly the same thing is happening. So do you really think that this is enough money? Is this cost efficient? You know, how you're going to spend the money? And for guys, it's like, yeah, take even more money because you need to grow faster, faster, and faster. And these are biases that are out there. And science has proven that there are those biases. And I think the big question is, because obviously we won't manage to solve this bias situation in a couple of days or even in a couple of months. But the thing is, how can we actually address this? And how can we make people aware of those biases? And I think that's a lot when it comes, that we need to do a lot when it comes to training and making it public, and making especially male investors aware what's happening, and helping them to avoid becoming or being part of this biased situation. But generally, as already mentioned, I think in the beginning, I think one major disruptor to the situation would be if women would start investing and become part of VC funds. Because when we look at the partners, so the highest level in venture capital firms, we see that only around 7% of those people in Europe are women, which is, again, even a worse situation than when it comes to female entrepreneurship. And when we talk about angel investing, it's basically a very similar situation, because I think there's also a lot of misconception when it comes to investments and when you can actually start angel investment, etc. And as another thing, I think the VC industry is even more of a boys' club, and not particularly by accident, but very much on purpose. And this is also something that needs to change, obviously.
Yes, I would add, besides to what Regine and Lisa Marie have just talked about, the demand side. No, they've talked about the supply side and financing and the biases that definitely have been documented by previous research. I would also like to add the idea of the discouraged borrower, for example, and the idea that women, which is supported by previous findings, that women ask less for external finance. And the explanation for this has been found also in the fact that they actually have less access, and they think that they won't get the financing, so why bother applying? And this perception of stronger financial barriers to entrepreneurship compared to men discourages many women from seeking external financing. So we have some work to do also on this part, because this stereotypical thinking and attitudes are also an important part of the gaps in financing.
Thank you. So, if you not, we have question on the chat. One about which one? This one. Diana told us, do you think that the pandemic will be a throwback to women entrepreneurship or the opposite?
Okay, now you're gonna go first, Anna.
Okay, I think that it can be a throwback, particularly because those type of businesses that have exploded during the pandemic are those more technology based, and in general women have a lower presence in this sector, and they have a higher presence in more traditional sectors that have been affected more dramatically and directly by the pandemics. Yes, it might be a point there.
I would just say quickly, so my company actually started during Corona last year, and we kind of racketed. So it could be both ways. As you probably heard the thing Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. So I think also a lot of females seized opportunities nowadays, as I did with my company. And yeah, so I think it goes both ways. I think it's a lot of opportunities too that wouldn't be otherwise if we weren't in this pandemic.
In Montreal, they made a study about that, and it was not good for women, of course. We have a question from Anis about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding could actually help or not?
Yes, there are some recent findings that say that the wisdom of the crowd could work better. And there are findings that support the homophilia hypothesis in crowd lending. Yes, women tend to support more women. And this is a difference with what happens in the business angel networks and in the VC funding. Yes. So yes, there might be an opportunity there. Also, it looks at the way that women communicate. It is better valued on crowdfunding platforms. Yes. So yes, that could be a nice opportunity to explore.
Yeah. We had an experience in Lyon too. We had a woman that created a platform, a crowdfunding platform for women, and it was difficult. I don't know why, but it was really difficult for her. A question from Pauline. Can we better financing women's project? Okay, especially when they do not fit the norm startup.
Now go, Lisa. Now it's your turn.
Thanks. So how can we better finance them if they don't fit the norm startup? I think generally when we look at the European funding landscape, we really have a problem when it comes to equity investments and investments in general, because I think we are in this very fortunate situation that there is a lot of money in the market, and a lot of people saved lots of money, especially in the past 12 months. Some of them are already investing it. Like, for example, as mentioned, in cryptos, maybe in real estate, etc. So depending on the amount of money that people are having. And what should happen now is that on the one hand side, we give those people, or we tell those people that are already investing why it makes sense to invest in this asset class of companies and to really do equity investments, because it not only hopefully contributes to the personal wealth, but also to contribute in a positive way to economy and society. Because what's happening when you invest in companies is this money is mostly being invested in jobs. So it's the best way to create jobs, which should be one of the ultimate goals to get out of this crisis. The other aspect, obviously, is to encourage other people to start investing, because what's happening now is that the money is on banks. You have not very attractive conditions when it comes to banks. So actually, you're sort of losing money when you're leaving it there. So there needs to be smart incentives, which are probably related to taxes, to get this money into the market. Because personally, and I'm not an economist, unfortunately, but I don't think that all the money that has been spent to get out of this crisis really coming from public money, being our tax money, I think we just can't continue to do this, because at one point this money will be gone. So we need to find ways to actually stimulate private investments and make sure that they are invested in companies and not in other things, because it's my personal view that this is one of the only ways to get out of this very, or potentially very severe economic situation.
Yes, I would add to this only that I think that also public funding has a role in this, and I think that here the inclusion of different criteria for positively evaluating those entrepreneurial initiatives that do not fit the norm, it's important. It's key in this sense, and in general, the design of support programs specifically tuned for women businesses necessities, which are much more varied than those of the high tech businesses or startups. And in this sense, there is some recent research that has documented, has analyzed actually several programs, both private and public, about that seek to support women entrepreneurs. And what they find is that when supporting women entrepreneurs comes as an add-on to the program, to a previous program that was designed to support small businesses in general, we face a pink washing, similarly to the greenwashing. We face the phenomenon of pink washing. This actually, it doesn't work. Okay, sometimes only imposing the criteria, for example, that a woman should be present on the board of a company, it doesn't reduce actually gender inequalities to a significant extent. And from this point of view, maybe the inclusion of different criteria and the design of programs that are specifically destined to support women entrepreneurs can be a solution. And there are some in this sense. And this study has documented that these programs, for example, finance businesses from more diverse sectors, not only technological one, although there was a dominant focus on technology-based sectors. For example, a French fund considered regional context when doing fund adjudication, and another one sought to support diversity in innovation and entrepreneurship in fund adjudication. And this might relate also, for example, with the previous questions that we had about migrant entrepreneurs, how they can be supported, well, including them as a category in these support programs.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So it's the end of this debate. So for my last question, I would like to know for each of you your wishes for the future and the message you would like to pass to a young woman entrepreneur. Regine, maybe?
Yeah, I can start. So first of all, I think that we have to see it to be able to be it, right? So I think we need to normalize starting companies, because if things is more normal, it's less scary. If, for instance, Kari is doing something, then Greta would think, oh, why can't I do the same thing? So the push in that direction. And when I'm coming to my wishes, I would say that just believe you can do it and you're half the way and you matter, and just build your inner confidence. And I would also say, if you have a girlfriend or a neighbor next to you that are coming to you and, should I start this? Or what do you think about this? Please encourage them to do so. Just picture if we're all standing under an apple tree, right? And you're trying to grab the apples, but they're too high up. But then the person next to you, you take her up on your shoulders, right? And then we can all eat the beautiful apples from the tree. So same thing, when we can all benefit. So please, the people around you, put them on your shoulders, right? And we will all benefit.
Wow. Perfect. Lisa Marie?
This was so well said. Like, seriously, I think I really have nothing to add, because, I mean, yeah, maybe there's one wish. I wish that we don't have to see female entrepreneurship as a specific type of entrepreneurship, which is very much related to what Regine said, because this is not a specific type of company. This is just maybe a specific type of people. Again, more than 50% of world's population starting companies. So I would love to see that it's not female entrepreneurship, but it's just entrepreneurship, and that it's just very common to see women starting companies, being successful and being successful leaders, as it gets more and more common to see women being successful in politics, for example. So that's the one thing. And my advice is very much related to what was just said. Just do it. I think women tend to wait until everything is perfect and for the perfect timing. But if one thing is for certain, then nothing is perfect, and there's never the perfect time, and it's never the right thing to do. You just need to get things done. And then maybe also talk about your ideas. Don't be shy. Just believe in yourself and find people who support you. Because as mentioned, there are so many of them out there. And I think when we support each other, we can achieve more, and we will have so much more impact and more fun and more joy and better lives.
So Anna?
Yes, well, I think that the sustainability discourse, and particularly the sustainable development goals, create a context for introducing new paradigms and make entrepreneurship more inclusive and build a more inclusive ecosystem. And I'm not talking about leaning on the old stereotypes. I'm talking about taking values and practices that have traditionally been associated to women entrepreneurship and uphold them as legitimate standards of doing business. And this resonates very much with what Lisa Marie was saying before. Is more than half of the population of the world. Okay, so this is legitimate and the ideal would be to end up talking about women's entrepreneurship as something specific. And in this sense, I would encourage all women to go for it and to make businesses and to set up businesses that are more humane, more cooperative, more caring with all those that are involved in the business, and more respectful with the environment and more sustainable.
So thank you very much, Lisa, Marie, Regine, Anna. I'm really proud to have been with you today for this debate, and you're such inspiring woman by yourself. So thank you very much. And thank you to all the people that joined us during this debate. And you could find all the information on the website of Arqus and on the YouTube channel of Arqus. And I have to told you that the next Arqus debate will be about the challenge of communication in science in June. So I'm sure it's going to be also very interesting. So thank you very much to all of you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.